Every week, Surfing the MASH Tsunami brings you three major stories from the world of steatotic liver disease. This weekend, we are bringing you each of those stories separately so you can listen during a shorter, discrete period of time. Hope you enjoy them.
For the last 5 years, MASLD stakeholders, whether manufacturers, trial sites, providers, payers, patients, or investors, have turned to Surfing the MASH Tsunami to keep track of drug and device development, epidemiology, public health initiatives, and practice patterns. This weekend, we are sharing the three main sections from our episode 3. Roger will provide more information after these notes from our sponsors.
Surfing the MASH Tsunami is sponsored by these healthcare-related organizations.
Madrigal Pharmaceuticals, Inc. is a biopharmaceutical company focused on delivering novel therapeutics for metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis, or MASH, a liver disease with high unmet medical need. Madrigal's medication, Rezdiffra, resmetirom, is a once-daily oral liver-directed THR beta agonist designed to target key underlying causes of MASH. Rezdiffra is the first and only medication approved by the FDA for the treatment of MASH with moderate to advanced fibrosis, consistent with stages F2 to F3. An ongoing Phase 3 outcomes trial is evaluating Rezdiffra for the treatment of compensated MASH cirrhosis, consistent with stage F4C. For more information, visit www.madrigalpharma.com.
Liver Right and the Liver Right Scanning Network. On April 15th, 2025, Liver Right will open America's first virtual specialty clinic for liver disease, offering adults in all 50 states video appointments and helping GI practices and health systems triage and treat the swelling numbers of patients seeking MASLD and MASH testing. Liver Right offers same-week video visits and accepts insurance. For more information, contact Liver Right, that's liver, and then RIGHT at www.liverright.com.
Tawazin Health, your partner in global liver health innovation. At Tawazin Health, we specialize in providing small or large-scale access to FibroScan examinations for liver health-focused early detection, clinical trials, independent research, and collaborative projects with clinicians and FibroScan providers increasingly throughout the world. As industry-leading experts, we design and deliver high-quality FibroScan services because we know that accurate, high-quality, reliable data drives better outcomes. To learn about our sister lifestyle app, mylife365.me, click the Tawazin Health link on the Surfing MASH homepage.
This week, our expert interview is with our good friend Mazen Noureddin, hepatology researcher, KOL extraordinaire, involved in the Houston Research Institute and Summit Clinical Research and Pinnacle Clinical Research. And Mazen talks about different drug classes, where things are at in development, what the range of options are. He goes into a little bit of detail on the various incretin options, the GLP-GIPs, the GLP-glucagons, the triple Gs, and really how to differentiate between them, what they mean, and why that's exciting. He talks about the FGF21s and the range of patients they can treat with it, why this might be a promising future for cirrhosis, and then talks about a few things meaning in this case drugs in development or classes in development that may be a little bit further out there, but are also important. The one near-in class he talks about as well as lanifibranor, which is a pan-PPAR, which has exciting things going on. It's finished enrolling and randomizing its Phase 3 trial. In general, he paints, I think, not a rosy, but an extremely optimistic picture of what the future will be for patients who need to be treated for fatty liver. And you'll have to hear the rest of it from him.
And now, here are Roger and Mazen Noureddin with this week's expert segment.
So this week, our expert interview is with our good friend Mazen Noureddin, who every friend of the podcast knows before. I understand that Mazen had a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Roger.
I'm not going to give up how old you are, because on birthdays it's fair to talk about that stuff, but on the day after it isn't. Except to say that you look pretty good for your age. I'll give you that one. Mazen, you've been a really busy guy recently. What have you been up to?
Oh, man. Million things. A lot of positive readouts in the trials. We were going to share some exciting news that Houston Research Institute that I established less than 3 years ago is now part of Pinnacle Clinical Research, that they have 15 sites and going beyond that to 30. And as you know, like Pinnacle and Summit Clinical Research, they are sister companies. They do different things, but I also took some leadership roles in both organizations along with Gail, the co-founder of Summit. So it's really exciting, and we're growing rapidly lately. We have some exciting news to announce. I think you're going to do that next week or so on your episodes. And we're recruiting really exciting people while we're growing and adding many services. So,
well, fantastic stuff. And actually, in 2 weeks, I've mentioned this in the business report to this episode as well. In 2 weeks, we're going to dedicate an episode to Summit and to Pinnacle, really. The discussion will be about drug development, which is something we're going to be talking about today as part of the month-long roundtable. And then instead of a typical newsmaker and expert, we're going to take a look at two aspects of Summit and Pinnacle in the aftermath of Stephen Harrison's passing. One being the influence he had on all of you, and the second one being how the two firms are growing together and what that means. And yeah, I understand there'll be some announcements as part of that. I've heard one of them already. I think is pretty cool. We're not going to give that away today, but that's exciting stuff.
Let me put it this way: he will be looking down, happy and proud of all of us, like the people, like the number of KOLs we have in the network, the number of the trials, the expansions. It's amazing how a company starts. And as doctors, we don't know how to do business, but the companies have grown like significantly with business people, some scientific people and doctors as well. And we're doing clinical research as I always wanted.
So we'll save that for next week, the definition of as I always wanted. What we're going to do for today, though, is Mazen will be our expert for the year on drug development. He'll drop in every couple of months, and we'll talk a little bit about drug development. This is our first session. So I think maybe a good place to start today would just be, as you look at the drug development landscape today from where you sit, what are the things going on that people need to know about? And what is your overall impression of how good or how bad this space is right now to be playing in?
Let me try to be as concise because I want people to listen to this in 25 minutes and get the updates. And as you know, your podcast has been also very informative, and a lot of people take the information from here and run with it. So we have to be very precise, and you keep us honest all the time. But Roger, like 4 or 5 years ago, and I know like there were investors listening to this, and there were people in the field and other fields, and it sounded depressing a little bit, right? A lot of failures, the biopsy issues, and it sounded like we're just like trying to infuse optimism to keep the field going. But I think we're like seeing signals within, and we, like any person involved in MASH research and at IITs, the errors with the biopsy, and finally, boom, we got the first drug approval, resmetirom, last year with hitting both endpoints. We expected maybe just one endpoint, and then multiple New England Journal papers and more coming, as well as Lancet, and positive trials reading one after the other. And with the most recent announcement that there was one-stage fibrosis improvement in MASH cirrhotic patients when you extended the treatment long enough from 36 to 96 weeks, that's through the Efruxifermin data. We have 3 solid FGF21s in the pipeline, 2 in phase 3, 1 in phase 2. We do have an oral drug approved for therapy. People are getting treated. We have efforts increasing for screening. Likely, like the screening requirements and quality requirements will change in the future. We have another drug, lanifibranor, PAM-PPR, in just finished enrollment in the study, which is very exciting. Survodutide by BI, dual GLP-1 and glucagon, published in the New England Journal phase 2 and phase 3 trial is running, including in cirrhotics that they recruit without a biopsy. Semaglutide, GLP-1, just presented a few months ago the positive phase 3 study. We expect approval this year, if not early the next year, and the future looks bright. And I can highlight FGF21s a little bit more, but let me go back to you.
Okay.
To keep us honest.
All right. Let's just start here, right? When we started this podcast, the first time we had Jorn Schattenberg on this podcast, about 5 months in, he was talking about an article he'd recently written about lessons from the NASH, what's called the NASH graveyard. And we would joke about how it was, NASH 11, pharmaceutical 0. And now we're obviously in a very, very different place. I've always believed that drug markets don't mature until you've got multiple different ways to treat patients, and you can treat the most challenging patients. So you mentioned cirrhosis at one point. I think that's one of the issues. Is cirrhotics obviously are the people with cirrhosis, the people most in need of treatment. And then this is a complicated disease, so different people are going to need 4 or 5 different modes of action of drugs. Where do you see the greatest momentum right now? First on, we'll do cirrhosis, and then we'll come back and talk about diversity of patient types. But where do you see the greatest momentum right now in cirrhosis?
I will talk about cirrhosis, but I just want to make sure I'm biased between all MOAs. And I think we have a great momentum altogether. And I've been talking about this like for the years, like we're going to get there. I think we got there now. And now we're going to talk about efficacy and more efficacy, and not in competition, rather in combination. But let's talk about the cirrhosis for a second. And that highlights the FGF21 class in particular, that FGF21s has proven, which is injectable drug, has proven that is here to stay. And has proven in particular that it's going to target this F3 F3 and F4 patients in particular. And at one point, people were saying, like, it's really difficult to reverse cirrhosis. Why you just don't focus on F2 and F3? So if I want to go to Efruxifermin for a second, and there was a recent announcement, press release from Akero that you're welcome to go to it, but also we will present this data at EASL as a late breaker. And basically in a randomized controlled trial and a study that lasted for 96 weeks, where a baseline biopsy was performed 36 weeks and then 96 weeks. And we got to the 36 weeks, which we looked at fibrosis improvement, and there was no fibrosis improvement that was statistically significant. And when you look at the numbers, you could tell that he will get there. And eventually we get to 96 weeks and they announced that there was fibrosis improvement in cirrhosis. Some people call it reversibility of cirrhosis, which we would never imagine we will get that. Importantly, I want you to stay tuned for the EASL. And one of the questions that we get always, how sick were these patients? Were they really early in the disease? And that will reveal at the EASL. I cannot disclose much now because of the data has not presented, but those will be presented and we'll see if that's really the case. Still, if that is really the case, that patients were really mild and reversed, it's a huge success for the field. And importantly, most importantly for our patients that otherwise need to wait for transplant.
Yeah, Bob. So Al Leilos, who's one of the panelists for the roundtable this month, did make the comment that his sense of the data from the Emerging Trends Conference, the data what was shared there on Akero, on Efruxifermin, was that some of those patients were reasonably sick, not just kind of borderline cirrhosis. So it'll be interesting to see what you produce on that front at EASL.
What I tell people in general in these trials is like, look if there's any transient elastography more than 20 or 25 and all these things. And probably we don't have all data analyzed by then, but something to watch for in general.
But it's not only Efruxifermin, right?
So we have in phase 3 also Pegozafermin that is published in the New England Journal, and they have a trial on pre-cirrhotic that was published there, as well as a trial in cirrhotic that's going in phase 3. They reached statistical significance in NASH resolution and fibrosis improvement. I wonder about their placebo rate. It's a bit on the lower side, if that can be replicated. And then the other drug is coming behind them quickly and efficiently and thoughtfully is the Efimosfermin, which is an FGF21, and it has an advantage that it's once monthly injection. And we presented the data at AASLD where we showed there was both fibrosis improvement and NASH resolution in a very good delta, along with NIT signal, and I expect them to enter phase 3 very soon.
So that's 3 FGF21s that are successful, which I think should be enough to put to rest any concerns from the first FGF21, which I guess the BMS drug whose name I'm forgetting right now, that did not do well. That the mode of action has a lot of value even if one drug didn't make it work. Those are drugs that are targeted really at the liver per se and at fibrosis, MASH, but really fibrotic. Let's run around to the metabolic side of the table and talk for a second about what's going on there that you find most exciting.
So we just departed from FGF21s, but they do have metabolic. They have lipid-lowering property, and you will see the drop in the lipid panel, the bad ones and the good ones. There was A1C improvement with the Efimosfermin by 0.5 and some hints here and there from the others. So there are additional metabolic, but you probably also want to know more about one of the elephants in the room that it's now invading the world, the epidemic of obesity, and those are the other drugs. So again, let me summarize them for those who are new to this podcast. The current drugs, let's start with the 2 orals in phase 3. Resmetirom, and you say, oh, it got approved. Resmetirom still in the trial. They got subpart H approval, and they're going to get final approval, hopefully and expectedly, when they have the long-term study that is ongoing to get the biopsy to show prevention of cirrhosis. So that's one. Number 2 is lanifibranor, finish enrollment in phase 3, positive results in phase 2. And let's go to the 4 injectables. We already talked about Pegozafermin and Efruxifermin, so we're up to 4. Number 5, and now we're going to enter what you're asking me, the semaglutide and the survodutide. So those are also injectables. So 2 orals, 4 injectables. We're talking about the last 2, semaglutide. They, in a trial that I mentioned, NASH resolution, fibrosis improvement, and they have the positive effect of weight loss, has been in the market for some time. It has thousands of patients' data on cardiovascular, preventing kidney disease, as well as other metabolic holistic effects. Survodutide, the same story, weight loss effect, but it has, an addition to the GLP-1, likely what we think a direct mechanism on the liver, which is the glucagon, in addition to the GLP-1 in a ratio 1:8, with its stress receptor there affecting fatty acid oxidation, and thus maybe more effect on fibrosis. And that's probably seen in their phase 2.
Do me a favor. You used a phrase that we don't talk about a lot on this podcast when we talk about this class of drugs, which is a ratio of 1 to 8. Can you explain what the ratio means? Can you explain what you're comparing it to and why it matters?
All right. So we're getting deeper. So, okay, that also takes me to other drugs. So GLP-1, semaglutide is GLP-1 only. When you have with the GLP-1s multiple kinds. So you have the GLP-1 semaglutide alone, blockbuster drug, right? It helped a lot of patients out there. It's on CNN and news all the time. There's another drug, actually, that's the dual G. Now we're going to the dual G, which is tirzepatide. Tirzepatide is a GLP-1 as well as GIP. The GIP, we still, it has roles in the liver. We still are trying to understand it better. They have done very well in phase 2 study where they showed NASH resolution and fibrosis improvement by Lilly. And we went from 1G to 2G, and I'm going to go again to back to 3G and go back to Lilly because they have the triple G. So their double G is GLP-1 GIP. There's another double G, which is GLP-1 and glucagon. And glucagon is what's attracting most hepatologists. We're excited about it. Why? Because there are receptors in the liver. And what Roger is asking me, what do you mean by this ratio? So it's how many GLP-1s you put in front of glucagon in a simple language. So there is the 1-in-1 by pemvidutide, which is also a very promising drug in phase 2 that you need to watch out for it. And this drug is going to have a very exciting data because phase 2B, and this is the first GLP-1 that look at paired biopsy at 6 months, which is much shorter duration. So based on their MRI PDFF data, we think that they're going to hit both within 6 months. Still a very high bar to achieve, but it will be very exciting. So that's 1-in-1. So survodutide showed that already NASH resolution, fibrosis improvement, the ratio is 1 to 8. There's another drug by Merck, efimosfermin, which has only MRI data that is very exciting. Their PDFF study compared their drug Efino to semaglutide, and that it was a smart comparison where they showed they did better on MRI than semaglutide, and even they showed in people that they lose less than 5%, which we think the effect from sema is coming from a lot of weight loss. They showed that if you lose less than 5%, you still have effect of Efino on the liver because the glucagon receptors. So those 3 drugs that we have, very exciting. They have different ratio. I don't know what's the significance for it. Everyone's saying maybe this better, this is better, but I think that needs to be proven in trials. And I always try not to compare across drugs unless if we do head-to-head comparison. Finally, also to let people know, there are drugs that are a little bit behind the scene or multiple attempts that either improve GLP-1s and duals pharmacologically, or they're being combined with FGF21. So the field, even despite these 6 entering, also there are multiple followers. Although you have not seen them in phase 2 yet, we're seeing them and we're getting asked about what is the best next step.
Do me a favor. Remembering that my last natural science course was high school biology. A ratio of 1 to 1 obviously means one GLP-1 to 1 glucagon. What's 1 to 8? Which is the 1 and which is the 8 on that?
The 1 and 8 is survodutide. So the concept with 1 to 1 is like sometimes people think that glucagon, for instance, has some side effects. Most importantly, increase glucose levels in the blood. And that we have not seen in pemvidutide. And that's like the thing that they talk about glucagon as well. So there's a less glucagon in survodutide in general compared to sema in that ratio that makes these ratio balanced enough not to have side effects, yet you get a little bit of sniff of glucagon on the liver while you're getting the effect of GLP-1 and weight loss, if that makes sense.
The more even ratio means more glucagon.
Yeah.
So we're looking now at just things that are already late stage, right? You mentioned lanifibranor, PPAR, a GLP-1, a GLP-GIP, a GLP-glucagon, a 3G, an FGF21, right?
I forgot about the triple G.
Triple G, right.
I could be wrong, but it's the triple G, like triple gun, if you want to say. And their study is, they showed weight loss study, they showed almost like a bariatric surgery weight loss effect, Roger, and that's up to 25%. And the question was if they're going to do well in NASH. They had a sub-study where MRI PDFF improved significantly. And I still don't know what will happen with Lilly in the future, but I'm hearing some encouraging messages that they are probably going to go to NASH. And this is important. Why? Because most GLP-1 and duals, they're going to lead to weight loss. They're going to improve cardiovascular outcomes because of the weight loss and maybe additional direct effect, kidney, sleep apnea. But the liver could be a differentiator, how much fibrosis you can improve, especially with the direct receptor. So So if you have the hypothesis is if you have all three receptors, probably going to have more liver effects. But also we have to talk about the tolerance, the discontinuation of these medications, all that play a role in the big picture.
Would it be safe to say the more medications that we've got that have G's in them somewhere, the more different ways we have to respond to what's going on in the individual patient in terms of not only liver, but I mean, if I recall correctly, is it SEMA that just got indicated for sleep apnea, or was that tirzepatide, one or the other? I get confused.
That's tirzepatide. And everyone, you need to do the study to use it for indication, but you lose weight, your neck, I don't want to simplify it that way. I'm not like sleep apnea expert. Your neck is less thick and you have less sleep apnea.
From personal experience, I know that's true because I know how often I got punched in the middle of the night for snoring when I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I know how often I get punched now. This is a lot better.
Do you have a machine, Roger?
No, I don't. When I lost the weight, I needed none of it. I have no signs of sleep apnea anymore.
I see. Here you go.
Yeah, so there you are.
Your neck looks fine to me.
Oh, sweetheart. That's the nicest thing you've said to me. So these are the obvious things that are going on. Further back up the pipeline, let's just take a couple of minutes. If I'm looking back from there, what other classes of drugs are emerging that we think are really going to be promising in the future downstream?
Oh, you want to go through the pipeline of phase 2?
Just at a high level. We got 5 minutes.
There are a lot of de novo lipogenesis drug that they can affect the synthesis of fat in the liver, like the Fascinate trial. Gosh, I'm spacing on their name now.
Tusaggimid is the company, and the drug is called denafenstat.
Yes, that's that. So sorry for that. So they affect de novo lipogenesis. They had a very good results in phase 2, very promising, but hair loss came up as a big issue. There's a big issue there. And there's other de novo lipogenesis. Some data was presented from Pfizer on 2 de novo lipogenesis drugs that one worked a little bit higher on the upstream and a little bit lower in the upstream to counter effect the effect of hypertriglyceridemia with one of them. Showed a hint of positivity. There's a mitochondrial uncoupler in the liver HU6 that I presented before and we published in Lancet Gastro is one of them. And they have another read for another trial coming out soon. FXRs are a little bit on the kind of like backpedaling right now. We'll see what Gilead read. They have a de novo lipogenesis drug as well as FXR. FXRs, in my opinion, is actually still an effective drug. It's just we had a bad story with Intercept, unfortunately, but I don't think it's not an ineffective drug. They are probably anti-inflammatory drugs that some companies are entering into it, which I cannot disclose now, but there are few in the pipeline. There's a very complicated figure I published in Hepatology as a review in 2023, but that's what the field looks like, how complex. So I'll refer you to that Hepatology paper, or I can send it to you, Roger, if you want to post that complicated figure.
If you want to send it to me, I'll link to it and put it up on the site along with this article. That's great.
And I bet you, maybe I can draw on it what has been updated since then.
That would be fantastic. That would be really special. Okay, so I just want to make sure we have things to talk about in a couple of months. I'm sure we will because I know we're going to have a lot of papers coming out of EASL. But do you see any storm clouds on this horizon? Any at all? Is the sky completely bright or is there any storm cloud anywhere in this?
If I go off the cuff, there's always a problem, right? The more successful we are, the more problems we are. I always say, I think the best attitude in the morning, you say, okay, which problem I'm going to solve today in a calm manner? I can guarantee you today that I had a couple of problems that I did not solve them in a calm manner. So tomorrow I will solve the problems with a better calm manner. But it goes like that. Sometimes it hits you hard, sometimes it hits you less. And we just have to look forward, make sure we're like focusing on our patients and the field and therapies. Our colleagues before my time, they did it with hepatitis C, hepatitis B, IBD, and here we are for MASH.
I'll comment on that. Our friend Steven used to quote Michael Jordan talking about the reason he made so many shots to win games was because he missed so many shots to win games, and it was the missing that taught him how to make them. This could just be the same thing again. Okay, well, thank you. Mazen just got off a plane from Miami and jumped on so he could do this interview. Let me let you settle in a little bit for the evening, and I will send this into production, and we will get this episode out. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and I look forward to having you back with us in a week or two, okay? And congratulations on all the exciting things you're doing.
I appreciate it. And Roger, I just want to say, keep doing what you're doing. A lot of people learn from you, and that's what we need in the field.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Please join us again next week when we start a new roundtable on advances in drug development in the last year, while our newsmakers and experts explore current issues and major ideas.
Until then, stay safe, surf on, and we'll see you next week on the Surfing the MASH Tsunami podcast. Hopefully I'll have my whole voice back by then. Bye-bye now.